while I'm giving this incredibly warm welcome greetings to everybody, I'm absolutely delighted to be with you here today among such a distinguished audience and a distinguished group of speakers joining us from all around the world for this webinar. So my name is Alice Spencer. I will be your co-host for today. I will be setting things up and bridging the gap between various different sessions. So I work for the University of Cambridge. So I work for the Institute for Sustainability Leadership. I'm the Executive Director of Education. And we have very much shared values with the people that are responsible for this webinar, both the IOD India and Gallup, of course, as well. So a little bit about Cambridge before I introduce the partners for this webinar. We're part of the School of Technology. We are a dinosaur. We are an 800-year-old institution, and our mission is to work with business, finance, and government to activate leadership globally in pursuit of a transformation of our economies for the benefit of people, for nature, and of course, for climate. And my contribution to this mission is via a range of education programs across 3 portfolios. So at the Institute, we deliver graduate programs for masters and postgraduate certificates. We do a lot of online programs. I wouldn't be surprised if some of you in the audience have taken part in our online programs, 8-week online and self-paced online, but we're perhaps best known for executive education. And I've had the pleasure of working a lot in India this year. So I've been to Mumbai a couple of times for a significant program of work with an Indian conglomerate, which means I've had the immense pleasure and opportunity to spend time within a company, trying to shift them at kind of a business model strategy level. And I'll be back in August for our 3rd executive seminar with the group. And I've also spoken at IOD India, both in London and Mumbai. So I feel like this is a webinar where I'm coming full circle and I have an opportunity to speak with you specifically about culture at workplace and employee engagement, which is the topic of the webinar today. And I'm welcoming you also on behalf of the organizers, the Institute of Directors IOD in India, in collaboration with our event partner, Gallup, hearing a lot from over the course of the next hour and a half or so. So the theme for this webinar, which you are joining, is building stronger economies by managing workplace cultural risks. I don't think I need to be the one to tell you all on this call with your infinite wisdom and experience that India's strong economic growth faces significant sustainability challenges that business leaders really need to address to future-proof their workforce and help catapult them towards the next level of no longer about optimizing within a broken business as usual system, but for businesses to take a leadership position and really shape those markets and sectors of the future. In CISL, we don't call this ESG or CSR or any of the other acronyms that we've become accustomed to. We call it competitive sustainability. So as we move forwards into this webinar, I'd like us all to think about what our companies need to do next to be on the right side of the future of winners in the economy. So today, our speakers will share insights on issues which are crucial for improving the overall health and productivity of the workforce in India. Key discussion topics will include workplace culture, employee engagement. We'll have insights from Gallup's latest report, weighing in factors shaping workforce culture, work-life balance, of course, skills gap, and more and more. And I'll be interjecting at points on sustainability leadership wherever possible, of course. So the Institute of Directors India, in joint partnership with Gallup, has prepared for us today a dynamic and insightful discussion that explores the intricacies of workplace culture and employee engagement, shaping the future of India's growth story. So let's get started. To commence today's session, I'd like to warmly welcome Ms. Vipula Gandhi to deliver her introductory remarks. Vipula is the managing partner and head of Gallup's US workplace advisory practice. She is passionate about the people behind organizations, which really drives her mission to help businesses achieve their goals by equipping employees with the best organizational practices and the ability to reach their full potential. Based in Gallup's Washington, D.C. headquarters, she and her teams work with multinational clients to understand their company's aspirations, develop long-term strategic plans, and deliver research and analytics-based solutions that drive positive business outcomes. Vipula has an MBA from a Warwick Business School in the UK and is an alumna of the Harvard Business School Advanced Management Programme. One of our main competitors, we will not hold that against her. She has a wealth of international leadership experience, having worked in Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and the United States. Ms. Vipula Gandhi, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you along. Please share with us your introductory remarks.
Alice, thank you so much for that glorious introduction, and I would try to live up to it in this short conversation. Human beings are gloriously emotional creatures who ironically take great pride in rationality. Gallup's research says that 70%, actually more than 70% of human decision-making is emotional in nature. Yuval Harari goes a couple of steps forward and actually says in Homo Deus that 99% plus of our decisions are emotional in nature. So think about the last time you bought an iPhone or bought a house or even bought an ice cream or decided to say hello to a colleague in the corridor in the office. All those decisions are based on emotions and feelings, whether we like it or not. We as human beings make decisions based on these feelings and then try and retrofit facts to make sure that the decision that was emotional makes rational sense. So think about the fact that human beings who are our employees who come to work, they don't work because some spreadsheet told them to do work, or there is a logic behind it that I get paid this kind of money, so I should add this kind of value. It is based on the fact that we feel cared, we believe in something, we want to give a discretionary effort towards an end. These are all emotions. Emotions drive logic. So how does it relate to our decision today or discussion today? Leaders, when they think about rational outcomes, like Alice mentioned, about growing economies, growing organizations, earnings per share, productivity, utilization, margins, they would be even better served if they found ways to maximize the emotionality and how to use emotional drivers to drive the business outcomes. Even if people understand that, leaders also know that human beings are messy. They are complicated, they are nuanced, and they are not easy. But with the addition of scientific, predictive ways of understanding our environment, and of course now with automation and AI, ironically, machines can help humans become better humans and maximize the value of emotional economy. That's what we are here to talk about, culture and employee engagement. I wanted to spend a moment to talk about these two words because they're kind of used sometimes interchangeably. I want to first start with the word culture. Culture is one of the most overused, misused, and sometimes even abused word in corporate life. It has as many definitions as people trying to define it. Gallup defines culture as the way we do things. It is the sum total of all the messages we get from our environment. Culture doesn't live in lofty announcements in town halls or big placards in the executive floor. Culture lives in conversations in the hallway that happens. Culture lives in when you promote an individual and people are seeing that this individual got promoted. Now, if your cultural value says that, you believe in respect and you believe in collaboration, and people are seeing this jerk getting promoted because he actually got the biggest deal in the company, then people understand that the authentic culture is about the biggest deal. It is not about those words that are being spoken. So culture can be scientifically defined, deployed, and sustained. And it doesn't have to be this vague, superfluous, amorphous concept that it happens often to be. Now, what is engagement? Engagement is, employee engagement was a word combination defined by Gallup in the late 1990s. It remains the emotional connections that people have with their workplaces. It talks about the conditions at the workplaces that helps people perform. So engagement is more about the team environment, and it is the performance dimension of culture. It also enables the culture. So how do I make sense of both of these? I love the analogy of a seed, because seed represents human potential for me. So imagine the seed of human potential is actually sowed in the soil of culture in an organization. And the soil can be the most fertile soil, or can be a toxic soil, or can be a meh soil. Now, that soil will define to an extent the ability for this seed to reach its maximum potential. And now imagine this, the sunlight, the rain, the air that's provided to the seed to become the best outcome, maximize that potential. That's your local workplace environment created by manager, defined by employee engagement. So the relationship of engagement and culture both goes both ways. And they work on each other. So leaders work on culture, managers work on engagement. So what's the role of directors in this? Now, directors set the tone of the organization. What they talk about is what gets on the CEO agenda. Board also defines what kind of CEOs they choose. So CEOs bring their own culture into the organization. And more importantly, cultural risks and an idea that culture is not working can actually help predict risks from reputation, from retention, and other aspects of risk as well. So how board of directors prioritize culture and engagement and ensures that they demand the right KPIs that are scientific and that matter is how this group actually defines the future, not just of the organization, but of economies that we are building together. So Gallup does the world's largest, most farthest reaching study on employee engagement that covers 99% of the world population, and it's called the State of Global Workplace Report. You can download it. It classifies employees based on a set of predictable questions into 3 separate psychological segments. These are the 3 types of employees, and whether you know Gallup or not, as I describe these 3 segments, you can actually picture the people in your corridor this today that you came across. Engaged employees are the lifeblood of the organization. They are the people who are taking the organization forward. They are enthused, they are encouraged, and they are seeking information, taking organization to the next level. 21% of the global population are in that lifeblood category. Now, this is a high bar instrument, and you'll hear more about it, but you need more of these people, of course. On the other end of the spectrum are the actively disengaged employees. Actively disengaged, which means they are not only retired on active duty, but they're actually spreading negativity. They are what I call the cave employees, consistently against virtually everything. So you want to lessen these number of employees, but know that they didn't join the organization this way, they became this way. And in the middle are the not engaged employees. They do 9 to 5, they give you their time, but no commitment. They will jump the ship when they get a 5 or 10% pay increase. And they are kind of there in between, waiting to get into the engaged category. Across the world, we are measuring this high bar metric for something that matters since 2009. Overall, a positive story. The numbers have grown from 12% to 21%. This represents economies. This represents better standard of living. It requires better output for the countries and the world and for humanity. This matters because it's about productivity, and not maximizing that is costing our economy a significant part of our GDP. So this number has actually dropped in 2024. It's the second time only that this number has dropped. Once was during COVID, you can see in 2020, and now in 2024. So we'd love for this direction to be up. And if you look at a global scenario on this, Americas are leading with the percentage of engaged employees, although United States and Canada in North America has a little bit downward direction in 2024. Interestingly, I'm pretty excited to see India's numbers at 30%. That's good numbers. That's something to be proud of, but it also refers to the opportunities we have to make it better. So why there is a decline in 2024? If there's one thing that I want you to take away from this conversation is about managers. Managers are change agents in the organization, and managers are struggling, ladies and gentlemen. They are burnt out, they have higher intention to leave, and they are getting crushed between leadership expectations and employee expectations and trying to manage both. So manager engagement, and not just managers as a whole, a group that's struggling, it's a certain type of managers that are struggling more. So under 35, which is in individuals that are young, they became managers during COVID times, and last 5 years, we all remember it's been a pretty dynamic, shifting environment, but they need support. I just wanted to end with certain actionability, because in this fast changing world, as leaders and board members, we understand the importance of change and navigating change. So the first and foremost thing I want you to take away from this is communicating. Please communicate more, better, often. Sometimes we get tired of our own messages, but it's important that we are absolutely clearly communicating effectively on the vision, on the direction, on what we need to do, and of course, recognize people alongside it. Leading and supporting change through managers as change agent. It's a job of all of us. We kind of get bored with our own voice. So how do we ensure that we are doing the right practices, right policies, right structures to support the change, which can otherwise fail? It is stunning to see 70% plus of changes failing. So ensuring that the change is held its hand through to the end is extremely critical. And last but not the least is the word hope. Hope may sound like a simple emotional word, but it has massive power in bringing that emotional connection to workplaces that you as a leader can make a difference. I'm going to just end by saying that today you joined this webinar. It already means that you know culture and emotional economy is an asset and can be a competitive advantage. And let's go to ensure that we are informing and inspiring others to ensure that we use emotional economy to drive the rational outcomes of businesses that we are all after. Alice, back to you.
Vipula, thank you so much for getting us started with that incredibly inspiring, but also quite practical insight. And I could not agree enough on the importance of culture in building organizational resilience, really, in a rapidly changing context and an already disrupted marketplace. So many thanks indeed, Vipula. I'm going to move on now and introduce our next esteemed guest, Mr. Shivakumar, to deliver a keynote address on the theme Cultivating High-Performance Workplace Cultures and the Role of Board Members in Shaping Organizational Ethos. So unfortunately, Mr. Shivakumar is not available to join us live today, but he's been kind enough to share a recorded version of his keynote, which we will share with you just after I give a brief introduction to his background. So Mr. Shivakumar currently serves as the operating partner at global private equity investor Advent International. Previously, he was the group executive president for corporate strategy at Aditya Birla Group and served as the chairperson and chief executive officer at PepsiCo Holdings Private Limited in India, in addition to previously being the CEO for emerging markets at Nokia. So an absolute wealth of corporate and strategic experience there, but also some notable academic achievements. He is a distinguished alumnus from IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta, and has received many awards for leadership, for turnaround, transformation, brand building. In amongst this illustrious career, he's also somehow managed to find the time to author 3 books. The first being Reflections, a compilation of Shiv's articles. The second is The Right Choice, Resolving 10 Career Dilemmas. And finally, a book called The Art of management. So IOD India IT team, if you would be kind enough to play the keynote recording received from Mr.
Hi, good day, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm absolutely delighted to be part of this discussion between the IOD and Gallup. I have had a lot of respect for both institutions, IOD for developing the concept of directorship in the country, as well as Gallup, whom I have followed for many, many years. All of you are going to be exposed to the new Gallup report in terms of how employees are feeling across the world in the year 2024. I believe the Gallup report, and I've gone through it in complete detail. I've read every single page of it. I think the Gallup report is a very stark mirror which is being shown to CEOs, CHROs, and organizations. And I think it would be a shame if CEOs and CHROs did not take cognizance of what employees are telling us. There is a new era of work, and I think it's going to reshape leadership. It's going to reshape the contract between the organization and the employee. Let me just give you some simple data points at a global level and then at a South Asia level where India data sits. At a global level, engagement is just 21%. Astounding. Okay. Not engaged is 62%. Actively disengaged is 17%. Even individual contributors, their engagement is only 19%. Managers' engagement is 27%. The total loss as a result of disengagement is $438 billion globally. To put it in perspective, the GDP of Maharashtra in a year is 512. So to give you a sense, the loss as a result of engagement is equivalent to the GDP of Maharashtra and bigger than the GDP of South Africa, as an example. Okay. Next, only 33% of employees globally feel they are thriving, 58% feel they're struggling, and 9% feel they're suffering. 50% of people are looking for jobs. Let's come to South Asia, where India sits. 26% engaged, 53% not engaged, 20% actively disengaged. 31% express stress every day, 34% experience anger every day, 39% experience sadness every day, and 29% experience loneliness every day. Only 15% of employees in South Asia are thriving compared to 33% globally. 63 are struggling and 21 are suffering. Now, the funny part of this data is any which way you slice the data, whether it's a manager or an individual contributor, the data is just as bad. Whether it's a man or woman, the data is just as bad. Whether people are working from office or people are working hybrid or people are working remote, the data is just as bad. And the data is bad whether it's young people or old people at work. So a question for all of us, which I seriously want you to think about. What is this telling us? This is telling us that people are not happy. That whatever we've been trying, whatever processes we put in place, whatever incentives we put in place, whatever job descriptions we put in place, it's not working. That's what it's telling us. So I think we need a cold shower bath. And I think that's what I'd recommend to all the CEOs as well as the CHROs. So, having outlined the problem, what is it that I believe we can do? The first thing, if people are feeling so insecure, what are they feeling insecure about? What are they feeling uncertain about? There are two things I believe people are feeling insecure and uncertain about. The first is their jobs. Will my job continue? And the second is their skills. Are my skills, current skills, enough for me to do well 5 years from now? So what can we as organizations do? As organizations, we can give them a certain comfort level on their jobs, given the knowledge that you have. But more important, we can invest in them, we can train them so that they get upskilled, so that they are ready for a future world. That's the first thing. Second, as organizations, we should innovate so that we go up the value curve. If we don't go up the value curve, we're going to go down the price curve. When we go down the price curve, we also go down the cost curve. When you go down the cost curve, you'll start cutting people. So that's why organizations, leaders, especially CEOs on this call, I'd urge you, go up the innovation curve so that you're able to add a bit of premium to your revenue. Third, try new things, especially in business models. Keep trying new things. There is no harm in failing, but there is harm in not trying. So when there is change, if you don't respond to change, that's failure. So please respond to change and try different things, be proactive. Number 4, and this I specifically to CHROs, do not mistake tactics with strategy. Every BPO, every GCC keeps running pizza Wednesday, disco Thursday, biryani Friday, etc. People come, eat and leave. I think CHROs need a cold shower. I think whatever you've been trying is not working. Please look at yourself in the mirror and say, this is not working. Promotions do not determine brand strength or brand success. Same thing. Your tactics are not going to keep people with you. Attrition still continues to be high in every BPO and every GCC. So ask yourself that question. And BPOs and GCCs I pick out because they are essentially cost centers. They try all these kind of tactics in order to look good, and they compete with the main company. It is wrong. So get away from tactics. Focus on what the company can offer, not samosa and pizzas. Next, number 5, build and promote authentic leaders. People who say it as it is, people who are honest, people who put the company first ahead of the team or themselves. Today, we are in gross shortage of leaders who do that. We have too many leaders who put themselves first, their career first, ahead of their teams and the organization. But all the response from the employees is telling us otherwise. They don't trust you when you're doing that. And finally, I would say every organization, we have all kinds of jargon out there, DEI, this, that, etc., etc. To me, the most important one is inclusion. Inclusion is a feeling. It's not a ratio. Diversity is a ratio. Engagement is a ratio. 70% engagement is considered good, very, very good globally. Inclusion is a feeling. When I come to the office, do people smile at me? Does my boss recognize me? When I'm walking the corridor, do people send out a cheerful note for me? When I'm sitting in a meeting, does my boss ask for my opinion or ask me to shut down? Okay? Inclusion is a feeling. Am I marked in all the mails? Is there BCC going around in the organization? So think about this. There is leadership, there's cowardice. Leaders who are cowards do not include people because they're insecure. So what you need to do is to have honest, authentic leaders who drive inclusion. That's your only answer against all the ills that we are seeing in this report. You want to do that? Be my guest and you'll do very well. You don't want to do that? Be my guest and you're bound to suffer. The choice is yours. That's all I have to say, ladies and gentlemen. As always, it's a delight to do this for IOD and Gallup, two organizations that I immensely respect. All the very best.
Of that incredible keynote address. So thank you very much indeed to Mr. Shivakumar for this insightful address. I feel like he really heralded a new age of the relationship between business and employees there. And we clearly have work to do as leaders, particularly as our people are the greatest unlock to our impact. And we need to get real. When investing in skills, innovating, failing fast at a meaningful level, like the business model level, and knowing your tactics versus strategy. And my biggest takeaway there is authentic leadership and inclusion and the importance of those things when we're talking about the workplace. So I'm now going to welcome another speaker. We have an incredible speaker here for you in person, online, Mr. Puneet Pratap Singh, to deliver his special address on the session, Regional Workplace Trends. So Mr. Puneet Pratap Singh is part of the Gallup practice team and APAC regional lead for research, design and analytics. Based out of Bangalore, he works closely with the Indian, New Zealand, Australian, China, and Southeast Asia teams. In his role, Mr. Puneet Pratap Singh focus is on leading the research and analysis of projects in the region, and he's also responsible for data insight and the impact by final deliverables. He has experience of multiple customer and employee engagement projects in hospitality, IT, automobile, banking, telecom industries, extensive experience there across industry. And Mr. Singh has an MBA from IMTG in marketing and a Bachelor in Technology degree in metallurgy from IIT BHU. What an incredible wealth of experience you're bringing to us today. Thank you so much for joining. Mr. Singh, it's over to you for your special address. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you so much, Alice, for that wonderful introduction. And as you can see, these are the numbers that Mr. Shivakumar was talking about. That 15% life, thriving in life, 31% stress, anger 34%, the job climate, the intention to leave, definitely concerning signs. But today what I'll be doing is I'll be going deeper into the part around employee engagement. Specifically, these three segments that Vipula was talking about: engaged, not engaged, and actively disengaged, and double click for India. Now, engaged are the ones, as Vipula was saying, psychologically committed. Actively disengaged, the disgruntled lot, and the not engaged, the quiet quitters in the middle. Like, and if I try to imagine them, I think of them like 100 people sitting on a boat. The 26 engaged employees are sitting in the front and rowing it vigorously in the direction as directors and leaders you've envisioned. The actively disengaged are probably sitting at the back and rowing the boat in the opposite direction. The not engaged guys are sitting in the middle with the oar in the hand. They see their supervisor or manager looking at them and they start to row the boat. And when that's not happening, they are casually sitting in there. So the best way to visualize this for me is like thinking about this as a boat. But what we'll do is we'll go into these three segments: engaged, not engaged, and actively disengaged, and double click it on India, especially with regards to the trends in the last few years. Now, while definitely there are some concerning trends in here, but there is a little bit of a positive story in too. If you think about it, back in 2012 or 2013, we were at 9% or 10% engaged population with 30% actively disengaged. A lot has changed since then. And there are multiple factors for it, like lots of policy changes that has happened. GDP per capita plays a role in this. Many actions by organizations like IOD are also probably playing a role in this. And definitely what we've been seeing is some early mover organizations within the country. They're able to create that environment where engagement could thrive. And that's why you see that big jump around 17, 18, and 19. And then you see another jump here, specifically in India, around 2021 to 22. This I would attribute to the number of efforts we as a country or as a region were doing to improve the experience of our employees. But just like share prices, these kind of efforts get factored in. People tend to expect them in terms of what is happening, and it starts to become part of their expectations. And of course, we've also seen that some of these efforts start to fizzle out as well, that this 33% engaged population has slowly come down to 30%. But the good thing this time is that the active disengagement is not going down. Is not going up. It's going down, in fact, from 26 to 21, 19, and 18%. But we do see an uptick in terms of the rise of that quiet quitters, the people in the middle. And that discretionary effort will not come out from these not engaged employees. It will come out from these 30% engaged employees that are lying here. Now, what has got us here from that 9%, 10% engagement to that 26%, and even this 30, 33%, and hopefully, as Vipula was saying, we are able to move this trend upward, will not take us to that coveted 70% that we were talking about. And it's not like that is not possible. There are multiple organizations, not just globally, but in India as well, which has got 70, 75% engaged workforce. And you can feel the difference when you walk into those organizations. What does an organization with 70% or 80% engaged workforce looks like? So the idea is absolutely that cold shower is required. And what do we need to do to move from this 30% to that 70% in terms of our engagement? And I'll go a little bit more specific. While the framework Vipula shared is absolutely applicable at a strategic level, let me get down to some of the specifics and granularities of it. Step one, measure what truly matters. I have a question for all the directors here joining this call. And although that number has changed considerably in the last few years, and I'm personally experiencing that, how many of our board level conversations have engagement or culture oriented metrics that are discussed on a regular basis? What is the proportion of your time that goes on talking about these predictive metrics about culture and employee engagement? That is a question every leader, every director who's here should be thinking about. And not just measuring for the sake of any number, you have to measure the right thing. Simply measuring ENPS and advocacy or satisfaction is not enough. In fact, that is one of the biggest challenge we see this here in our region. There are multiple reports quoting that Indian workforce is 90% engaged, 80% engaged. That is a big, big problem because it puts us in an echo chamber of confirmatory bias, where we start to feel that everything is fantastic and we don't take those bold actions that Mr. Shivakumar was talking about. We need a higher order metric. We need a metric that is able to, and I'm not questioning the intention of those reports. Probably it is that they are measuring that how many people are not actively disengaged. And it is a fair statement to make that 82% of our workforce is not actively disengaged. But you need a higher order metric to differentiate between these not engaged and engaged employees. That's a big task for us. And once you have that metric, then the part two or the next step comes in. How are we equipping our managers? It is not enough for leaders to simply tell managers that, hey, you are responsible for your team's own engagement and you need to work on it. First, we need to redefine those roles and expectations. What does a role of people manager looks like in each one of our organization? Are we providing them the right training and resources and development so that they even have the capability and skills to do what is expected out of them? And then thirdly, and very importantly, what we need to figure out is how do we establish accountability? Not just for these managers that they are focusing on their team's engagement, but we need to support these managers with tools and instruments that they can hold their employees accountable. And that is a responsibility for leaders to make sure that we are enabling and equipping our managers. And thirdly and finally, this has to segue into a culture of employee engagement. It cannot be a one-time event or a one-time initiative. It has to be part of our culture. It has to be an ongoing journey to build this culture of employee engagement. I'll go deeper into each one of them very quickly, but starting with measuring what truly matters. And Gallup can definitely support all the organizations here on the call that the higher order metric that I'm talking about, we have the research that gives us the framework that is truly higher order and measures the differentiation between a not engaged and an engaged employee. And you'll see these are the factors that were aligned with what Mr. Shivakumar was also saying. At work, do my opinion seems to count? Do I get that ongoing recognition or praise or a pat on the back? Is there someone who talks to me about my progress? Do I have the opportunity at work to learn and grow? Do I feel I'm contributing to a bigger mission or purpose? These 12 statements that you see famously called as Gallup's Q12 are 12 universal and psychological needs of an employee at workplace. These are very core to us as an individual, and they're applicable to all of us, irrespective of level, age, tenure, which geography, which culture we are in. These are core psychological needs all of us need to be engaged within an organization. So the idea here is that how can we use a framework like this or a framework which is a little higher order than a simple advocacy, or I would recommend my organization as a good place to work or a great place to work, than questions like this which truly differentiate. And unless you have a metric like that, because if you can't measure it, it is very difficult to change it. So first step, measuring a higher order metric. The second step, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, and I was reading some of the comments on Mr. Shivakumar's post as well, talking about the role of the manager. And I'm sure everyone has heard about that line that people join organizations but leave managers. There is Gallup research behind that line. We've checked the variance in a team's engagement and the role a managers play. 70% of the variance in a team's engagement is explained by just one single factor: who's their direct manager. And while there are so many things that we need to think about when it comes to role of a manager in each one of our organizations and how as directors and leaders we can enable them, there is one very important decision you have to make when you are thinking about this. And that decision is who you name as a manager, who you name as a people manager. And I'll give a very simple example for everyone here. I think all the regions which have been represented are very well aware of cricket. And I think all of us will know about Sachin Tendulkar. Big fan. Sachin Tendulkar, amazing cricketer, brilliant individual contributor. He was a fantastic batsman. But if I get into a conversation about, was he a great captain? There could be a little bit of a dialogue or a debate around that. So the idea here is that we need to figure out who are the Dhonis and Gangulis within the system, who are not only great as individual contributors, but probably have that natural intrinsic manager talent. And Gallup has studied not only this intrinsic manager talent, but how do you bring this and combine this with engaged workforce, and how do they stack up? And those interested in research, I would definitely recommend going into a net gain analysis where we see how these different parameters stack up over with each other. You have an engaged workforce, you have talented employees, which is something which is a big opportunity area for us. You focus on their strengths for their development, but at the core of it is a great manager. Someone who not only has that natural talent, but is well equipped and enabled by the leaders and the skills required to create that engaged workforce, which results into an impact on business performance. And this way we circle back to that whole GDP number that we were talking about, that by doing these kind of things, we are able to get an uptick of almost 59% in revenue per employee. And all of these things that we are talking about, they become even more important because if you consider how employee expectations have shifted, how expectations are changing, especially for the younger generation. Employees want clarity of expectation. They want purpose and meaning in their work. They want to be recognized for what makes them unique. And they want strong relationships, particularly with a manager who can coach and inspire them to reach the next level. And I'm sure we'll have a deeper conversation on this as we move into our panel discussion. Back to you, Alice.
Thank you so very much indeed, Mr. Singh. Apologies, I was just taking a screenshot actually of that final slide there, which I found very inspiring in terms of the expectations of the workforce today. So a really brilliant address there. So creating the environment for thriving workforces, and how much time do you actually spend on culture and employee engagement, and how do you measure success? And I think to Vipula's earlier point, leadership might plant the seeds, but who's taking accountability for the environment required for these to grow and maybe even bloom? And it got me thinking about the company I'm working with in India, with 1.2 million employees across an incredible range of sectors, but they all share the same sustainability strategy and ambition. So how do you make sustainability a little bit of everyone's job and not just the solitary pursuit of the CSO? Same for the CHRO. How do we make this a little bit of everyone's job in enabling the culture at every level? That's given us lots to think about as we move into our highly anticipated panel session of this webinar on the theme, can mitigating key workplace cultural risk indicators help propel India towards higher economic growth? So I'll ask you all to be ready with your questions. So at the end of this session, we'll be doing a Q&A. So please write those down as we go through the panel. So we're going to explore critical cultural risk indicators shaping today's workplaces in India and South Asia. By addressing these underlying issues, ranging from employee engagement to manager burnout, we're going to unlock new pathways to sustained economic growth and organizational resilience. We have with us today Mr. Jeremie Brecheisen, nearly got it wrong. Jeremie Brecheisen is the managing partner of Gallup EMEA, so across EMEA, and our panel chair. And he has got a great lineup of speakers who will share more about the latest trends in global workplace culture, employment crisis, work-life balance, mental health, workplace safety, and a whole raft of other topics. So looking at their bios of the 5 people on this panel, and I will briefly share their bios with you before we welcome them into the room, I believe that we have nearly 150 years of collective experience here on the panel. So I'll be thrilled to see this unlocked in the conversation. We have already met Vipula Gandhi, the managing partner and board member from Gallup, and also Mr. Puneet Pratap Singh, the regional director, research and analytics from APAC from Gallup. We're also going to welcome to the panel Ms. Avantika Susan Nigam. So this Avantika is the Chief People Officer at Indian telecommunications giant ACT Corp. She's a seasoned HR leader with over 20 years of experience across industries, including telecoms, consumer goods, and consulting. At ACT, she spearheads the company's people strategy, focusing on talent development, organizational culture, and performance management. She holds an MBA from Symbiosis Institute of Management Studies and has been recognized among the most iconic HR leaders by the World HRD Congress. So a warm welcome to Avantika. We also have Dr. Tanaya Mishra, Global CHRO at InSolutions Global Limited. So Dr. Mishra is a distinguished executive coach and facilitator with over 30 years of experience in human resources and organizational development, with an impressive academic background that includes a PhD in manpower planning, a postgraduate degree in human resources, and a bachelor in law. So she brings both academic rigor and real world expertise to her role. She is also a decorated award winner. She's recognized as an HR powerhouse by ETHR World and has received several accolades for her contributions, including Women's Super Achiever and Global Iconic Leader Awards. And finally, our fifth panel member is Professor R.P. Banerjee, Chairman and Director of the Eastern Institute for Integrated Learning in Management, Kolkata. Professor Banerjee has over 3.5 decades of experience in the intersection of academia and industry. He is a professor in finance and ethics, and he has taught nearly all areas of management globally and with institutions such as Pennsylvania State University, the University of Hamburg, and the illustrious Stockholm University. His scholarly accomplishments include over 200 published works and authorship of 9 books, which is quite incredible. So Professor Banerjee is renowned for integrating Indian spiritual values into modern business practices. He's held significant leadership roles in academia and industry, including positions at IIM Calcutta and the Ministry of HRD, the Government of India. And again, we have another award winner in our panel. He's been named Asia's Greatest Leader and Inspirational Leader of the Year by CNBC TV 18. So I will stop embarrassing everyone with all of your accolades and ask Jeremie to take us forward into our panel session. Thank you so much, Jeremie.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alice, for doing such a great job introducing everybody. Everybody deserves those accolades, and it's good to be with all of you, and we're so grateful that you're listening in. We hope that you're getting a lot of insights from this. I'm going to have you guys do some poll questions, but before we do that, Dr. Banerjee actually can't stay here the whole time, and so before he leaves, I wanted to make sure we started with some questions for him. So, Dr. Banerjee, I'd like to ask you, India's workforce is young and ambitious, but employee engagement, despite being higher than some other areas in the world, does remain low from what it could be. From your experience in academia and out in the corporate field, what are the most critical factors holding back motivation and performance in Indian workplaces today?
Thank you, Jeremie. Yeah, I'm going to talk about, you answered your question, I guess, in a few minutes' time. Just to mention in the beginning that I have to leave the, screen by 5:30 Indian Standard Time, meaning another 10 minutes from now. Because I'm in an airport, I have to catch a flight. Well,
all good. We're so glad you gave us the short amount of time you did have to be with us.
That's the evening. I have a little bit constraint on this. So the point is, Indian young force who are there in the workplace, we have measured them from various angles. There are various descriptions, and also the way you have mentioned. I support that, but I have a solution which I have been talking about in various academic contexts in the world. particularly in the western part of the world, in your area and in Northern America. The point is, I have a model. You have to become a mother leader. In a corporate context, you become a leader like a mother. Not a mother by gender, but mother by mind. When you become a mother by mind, then you have people engaged in the highest, possible ways, becoming part of the system. Like a mother can engage people in a family, in an ideal system. If you become that, then you don't really motivate them. You inspire them from intrinsics. So their intrinsics are now, stimulated and energized. So it's not that, people are driven by the superficial mind. People are driven by the intrinsic mind. There is a difference between superficial mind and the intrinsic mind. Psychologists in many places have narrated people, human being as a needing animal. I contradict that. Human being is not a needing animal. Human being is potentially divine. And if the person is a potentially divine, all the good qualities and attributes are there. Young people are really good. I support them because they're dynamic, they're energetic. Why don't they contribute, if at all? They contribute usually. They contribute, in most of the cases. Some of the cases they may not contribute because they find that the system is not for them. Meaning you own the system, like in a family, if I'm a child of a mother, I own the system, even if there is a negative aspersion on me by mother. There is a concept which I have mentioned that if the mother bids by hand a child, then the mother's internal, the intrinsic bleeds. The heart of the mother bleeds within. Meaning it's kind of being along, being along with always when your involvement will be highest. Your energy input will be highest, your loss will be least. And the participation, when the mother is there in the organization, or the mother like people are there in the organization as in the role of a managers, in the role of a leaders, then you'll find it's automatically ethical in nature. And it's, having a concept of distributive justice to everybody. Mother's paradigm has a paradigm of distributive justice. And if that distributive justice is offered to the system, the youngsters in the system, or even people at any different levels of ages, qualifications, achievements, and identities, there will always be, along with the objective fulfillment or the orientation of the organization in the best possible manner. Yes, there are ways to deviate from it. There could be some deviations, but then you get the most. So the highest assimilation, combination of energy in a system you get if you can become a mother, and the mother would solve the problem. No other mechanism can solve the problem. That scale, that rate, that maximum condition as a motherly person in the leadership or in the managerial positions can make it happen.
How you think leaders need to take care of their younger workers in India? Any last thought you want to leave with us?
Well, thank you. Yeah, a few minutes I'm going to respond, just a few minutes. Our leader should consider it's a council of equals. The moment the leader considers the person, I give an example. I run an organization which has passed through a massive transformation last 20 years. And the transformation now, it's at a national scale, which were a very local and small one. I got a transformation. How? Because when I found the people who are there driving my car, who are there, cleaning the floors, who are there, watching the doors, these are the people I found that these are the people who were considered that, they are the lowest level or next level people. But I thought that they are also my own people, so I need to be with them always. So when I started becoming, and I genuinely believe that they should be considered on par. So all the levels of hierarchy, if you disregard the official formal hierarchy and make a non-hierarchical relationship with them, people feel like it's my organization, and people feel like doing something. And in many cases, we have got many ideas from the lowermost level of people, so to say, those who are considered lowermost. So, in that case, the motivation level of others, my students, I consider that my students should be given a priority. So I've given a, philosophical, that's accepted. We all accepted that, which I wrote in Sanskrit. If you permit, I'll just mention, quick, this is, I'm just mentioning and I'm giving the English rendering of that. Shatra sukhe sukham shikshakaha, shatra nam tu hite hitam, no atma priyam sukham shikshakaha, shatra nam tu priyam hitam. This is what is Sanskrit. The meaning is this: a teacher should draw the happiness once only when his or her student has earned the happiness. A teacher should be in a position to have a satisfaction on the welfare, personal welfare, when his or her students have earned that. So this is a philosophy which can make a turnaround in an academic system if at all that's needed. And I believe the total involvement of the students is possible only when the barriers in between the teacher and students are lost. Barriers are removed, and the students feel like it's my home. So they come with an agenda, sports and culture, they come with the agenda. They prepare their own agenda for enhancing the academic output and the level of involvement. I don't say it's a motivation. It's a kind of inspiration to them. And the inspiration is not an external inspiration. It's an intrinsic inspiration. It's my personal experience that has helped and that has actually transformed. And I have, mentioned this in many places. Some of the places have adopted this also in some of the departments, and they have found it's really very effective. Thank you. I think your time is also limited, my time as well.
Yeah, well, we've maximized our time with you. So thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee. You've been wonderful. We appreciate that. The first poll question you can see is, how seriously does your organization treat culture as a business lever? Very seriously, and we have a plan in place to improve culture. Very seriously, but we have no plan in place. Seriously, but not at a C-suite level. We will take it seriously in the future, not at all, as we don't see it as a business lever. My guess is the people who might give that last answer aren't on this call. So it's great to see some of your answers. You can see that most of you are saying we do take it seriously and we do have a plan, but there are a number who are saying, hey, it's serious, but maybe not as at the level we want it to be. So thank you guys for continuing to answer that. I see we're at about 30% of you participating. So I'm sure as we continue, there will be those numbers will continue to move. I think for all of you, the key thing that Gallup has learned is that it's about hope. It's not about perfection. Are you on the right path? And are you giving people hope? I want to ask a question to Avantika. As you lead as you serve as a leader at ACT, I was curious, as you think about all of these disengaged managers we talk about around the world, you've done a great job at creating highly engaged leaders and managers, and I think that's been a core part of what's made you great. Curious to hear, what do you think are some of the secrets to really engaging leaders and managers so that they're in a place to help others?
Thank you for the question. I think it's hard work. It's always a journey, and we continue to be on that journey. We're engaging with Puneet here on the call, as well as we look to prepare ourselves for the next phase of the organization's growth. Some of the things that ACT really stands for and repeats constantly in every single forum is our philosophy, and our philosophy is what becomes that guiding light for our managers and our leaders and employees in general, which starts with just saying that happy and satisfied employees lead to happy customers, which leads to a successful business. So that's the foundation of the way we operate as a company. And I think that's the first level of clarity that we give to everyone, saying, this is the priority. Your employees need to be cared for, and they need to feel that they're cared for. And that's the starting point, really. So when, in addition to everything else that we do in terms of training managers, first-time managers, leaders, etc., on how to be better at leading, giving them clarity on what's expected, what is the business expecting of them, and what is the business expecting of their teams, having the right governance structures in place for them to perform better and to help their teams perform better. I think what really stands out is just that fundamental underlying expectation that we care for employees, and you need to represent that to your employees in every single forum. And I think the other thing is that we listen to employees through the year. And that's an expectation, again, that is very clearly cascaded down through the organization. We have many platforms, including Gallup Insights Action Planning, but many, many more, where everyone who is in a managerial capacity is expected to listen and then come back with what's needed to be done around that. And I would say those two things, probably are things that we do as a discipline that help us in engaging our employees and our managers.
I like both of those a lot. Avantika, is there a specific leadership moment or manager or leader that just you carry with you as a great example? That maybe you could share something specific, maybe a little vignette?
There are many, but I'll tell you one that stands for many different things. It's from a previous organization that I was with, but it happens quite often in my current organization as well. So I was in a food and beverage organization, and we were coming out with this big product launch. And in those kinds of organizations, food and beverages, you do a tasting for the employees. So there was a big conference. There were 2,000 employees in that conference, and everyone got something to taste. This is your new product. And there was a big, there was a lot of excitement in the air, and the leader of the organization at the time stood up in front of everyone and said, "Do you feel confident you can sell this?" And everyone's going, "Yeah." And there's one guy at the back, and he's been, the top incentive earner. He's been a top sales guy for a long time. And then this leader said, "Does anyone feel underconfident?" And he raised his hand. So everyone thought he didn't understand the question. And so the leader repeated his question, saying, "I'm asking you if you don't feel confident." And he said, "Yes, I don't feel confident." And so the whole conference went quiet, to hear why is he saying this. And he gave this very simple insight. And he said, we had launched a product in the past, which was in the same color packaging. And if you bring this to the stores, folks are not going to pick it up. The stores are not going to be excited about it. Change the color of the packaging, and I will, I will sell it, and I will be the top performer again. And it's not about this question. It's not about listening, because listening is just the start point. But the organization actually took cognizance. We took losses because we'd spent on the packaging material. The production lines were ready, and we changed the packaging and we launched the product. On this one, obviously there was a little bit more double clicking that happened, but we changed that. The message that's sent to the entire organization is, in Gallup terms, your opinions count, right? And for me, that's a really powerful example of, an organization that listens, that cares, that truly respects its employees.
It's such a great story. Oh, Avantika, that was wonderful. I agree. That's a story you carry with you and you remember. And I'm sure you see it happen a lot in your current organization as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. That was wonderful. I do want to ask another poll question for everybody as we think about this. The next poll question is around culture ownership. And I think Avantika's story kind of really captures that. So this question is, who truly owns workplace culture in your organization? Now we're being mean and we're only let you choose one answer. So you might say it's everybody, but we're making you choose, right? So we'll show the results at the end. So just keep taking that. But as you're taking that poll, Dr. Tanaya, Mishra, I want to ask you a question. You are an expert on coaching, and I'm sure you've seen some amazing coaching programs in your time. Can you tell us about one of the best programs you've seen and what made it great and why you think it worked?
Look, coaching is a bit of both coaching and mentoring. And believe you me, when Shiv said that, human resources is not supposed to plan samosas, if you were actually distributing samosas, you would never survive as a CHRO anywhere. So some of the best programs that I've seen is probably, when I was with Accenture, when we had also Gallup, who was one of, we did Strength Finders for all our leaders. We provided coaching programs, but it came right from the top. It came from the erstwhile, the no more Mr. Pierre, who was a cancer survivor. And I think it came from within. It's about how do you lead? How do you, because coaching is all about engagement. It's about leading by example. It's about creating that workforce that looks from within, and says, well, maybe this is not right. Because look, while you're asking so many questions, it's really everybody is supposed to be part of the culture. So any coaching program that's successful is always self inculcated, because ultimately, what does the coach do? The coach actually raises a mirror for you to see and to look within and see what's right and what's not right. And then for you to make a conscious or subconscious decision of how are you going to do and what are you going to do and what is it that you are working on. And so therefore you have a full plan in place to help you. And that's what the coach or the mentor does to help you in the right path. So lots of organizations are following coaching practices, and very successfully so.
That's wonderful. Tanaya, sorry, Dr. Mishra, as you think about some of the best coaching moments that you've witnessed and that you've seen, what's a transformational moment where you saw coaching made a difference in a leader's life?
Look, the aha moment is when you see people struggling with their careers, at least for me, and able to look within themselves and find out what really is the issue, what really is that one little thing that they need to shift. They've been performers, you see, because we have different kinds of issues as we go through our journey as in our careers. And one could be midlife crisis, one could be our bosses, one could be, maybe companies not doing so well, maybe you have a amalgamation or a takeover that's happening, or there's redundancy of a role. There are different situations which come, Jeremie, and each issue is never the same. Each one of us is uniquely different. And again, the mother philosophy doesn't really work, although we had one of our panelists say so, because look, you need to play different roles. And that really is what, because different strokes for different folks. That's how it is, Jeremie. So I think the aha moment is when you help someone to within and help them in that journey of being successful in what they measure as success. And that can be extremely, extremely satisfying to be able to see how that person makes those little shifts, is able to understand his or her moves, and is able to really fly. That for me is success.
Yeah, I love that idea of looking inside. There's so many external pressures when you're a leader of what everybody wants from you. But if you don't know what you want as a leader, then you are tossed to and fro by the wind, and you actually don't have an anchor. And so that looking inside isn't just giving yourself a hug. It's actually critical to staying the course. So thank you so much, Dr. Mishra. That was wonderful. Vipula, as you were talking about some of the global trends, I couldn't help but think about connecting the dots here with what Dr. Mishra was talking about with communication, and how leaders communicate their vision that hopefully they're anchored to. What advice, what would you say about leadership communication and things that these directors need to be thinking about?
So I'll start by saying that as leaders, we need to communicate and communicate often and communicate with clarity and the direction of the future. Now, these are some simple words that all of us already know. When I work with organizations advising them, it is still not happening. And I'll tell you why it's not happening. Number one reason leaders are not communicating today, Jeremie, is because life is changing fast. As the world is changing, the dynamism, think about the tariff information, right? How it's changing by the moment. So leaders are waiting for clarity before they think they can communicate with the rest of the organization on subjects that are changing fast. However, in today's multidimensional, dynamic, fluid world, people want to hear even if we don't have the clarity. So we can share what we know and talk about what we don't know. And this vulnerability, this clarity helps us in building those connections that our employees can trust leadership. So one big reason people are not communicating today, Jeremie, is because we are waiting for clarity ourselves. And I just want to remind leaders that be authentic, be human, be vulnerable, and share what you know. The second thing I would say is leaders are not communicating today in my experience is because as leaders, we have talked about change like 5 times, 6 times, and we think it's done. And we are in these meetings at the top level about creating this change, but not everybody's in those meetings. They have day jobs and they need constant updates. And then, whenever we are trying to change something, we need to ensure that we just don't make a big deal about the communication at the beginning and then it just dies down, although change takes months and sometimes years to actually get through the ground level. So think about in the case of AI adoption. In the US right now, every organization is busy with the AI adoption, but the messages have to be repeated, they have to be often, they have to have clarity, and you have to talk about things till the time you get bored. One of the best CEOs I know, he actually said to me that I say things 500 times and I only know the purpose of my communication is served when people are telling me things that I was telling them for 500 times. So communication is absolutely critical. Let us just do more of it more often in a more human way to be authentic leaders that Shivakumar spoke about.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great story from that CEO. Vipula, what's the best leadership communication you've ever seen in your life?
I would say there is one of the best run organizations across the world. It's a name everybody knows, but I cannot reveal it. I'm just amazed how the CEOs build their legacy on the direction of the organization and the culture that they're building. So I can't name the CEO, but hugely respected and hugely successful company. And the CEO thinks about workplace culture as his or her legacy. So thinking about communicating it with passion, with strong belief, with authenticity, and with not perfection, but vulnerability, and how often it's related and how it comes from the heart. For me, that's what connects. We're all humans. We are all wired to figure out where there's a fakeness versus an authentic, genuine connection. So the CEO that I truly admire here in the US, that always kind of raises the bar on how leaders should communicate.
I love that idea that it's a legacy you're leaving, right? And it's something that it's a gift that you're trying to leave behind, not just something, an egotistical thing you want to be remembered.
So I'll just mention a public case here. So Satya Nadella from Microsoft, when he started talking about cloud computing, he took Google from a well-known, fighting internally, conflicting siloed culture to a culture of growth mindset and empathy. And that's his legacy. And he built it. It's a well-known case out there in public. But again, we have to see culture is dynamic. So what got him here may not got him to the next level. So we all have to invest on culture on an ongoing basis.
That's a great point, Vipula. Puneet, we've maybe got 2 or 3 minutes before we should save time for Q&A. As we look at some of the things that are going on in those trends that you were showing about India, what's when you think about the advice you gave, what's an example of a leader who actually has done that, as you've been the subject matter expert that we all look up to at Gallup around the world, and we call you for help all the time. What's a great example of a leadership moment you've seen as you've worked with some of the greatest organizations in India?
And so I'm actually going to take a name. And I think I am at liberty to take a name of that leader. And that leader is the promoter for Godrej, Nisaba Godrej, a very well-known name, one of our clients. And the way she conducts herself, like that is something to look at. And she's one of the very respected leaders here in the country. Like her openness in reaching out to people from absolute frontline to the senior leaders, like the examples she shares, she's absolutely someone who brings out like the Gallup science that we talk about, having a mutually trusting relationship, having best friends at work, providing clarity in terms of turmoil. She's one example that I would say is someone really exemplifies what we talk about as a great leader, and the conversations that we are happening.
Interesting you say that, Puneet. A lot of leaders think if they become friends with their employees, then they can't have tough conversations with them. They can't do the hiring and firing of the job and those things. I know we've got our science on best friend, but do you feel like leaders can really be friends with their teams, or do they need to keep a distance in order to manage performance?
So that's an ongoing conversation that we always talk about, that how can you keep relationships and performance like side by side? And I think that they can definitely live along. Like you can have your best of friends and but you have to go by performance in terms of that's what really comes down to it. And not anywhere else. Like I've seen this happen in my real life as well. If the decision in the end comes down to performance, but I'll give a twist to it. That friendship that has created sometimes becomes an enabler for performance. When someone is struggling with their work or their day-to-day things, that they may not reach out to their manager, they may not reach out to someone which is there in the system and in terms of that professional hierarchy. But if they have someone who's like a best friend at work, they can reach out to that person and help them solve those kind of challenges. So I think rather than in conflict, of having a mutually trusting relationship is enabling performance in many different ways, which might be a little counterintuitive, but it does do that.
Well, I think about the toughest conversations that someone's had with me that actually had an effect on my behavior, and it was from people I trusted and loved. The people who I didn't trust and love, who had tough conversations and were distant from me, I was like, well, that's your opinion.
But having said that, Jeremie, I'm just jumping in. I mean, I've also pulled up people for not delivering, and 20 years hence, we are still good friends, and they come to me for coaching and mentoring, and so it's you can be friends, but the friendship stops somewhere when you have to be firm, because ultimately you're here for a mission. You have deliverables. You're working in an organization, and every organization is a profitable organization unless you're working for an NGO. Well, you can't compromise deliverables just because you're friends, and I think people respect that.
And even NGOs got to make profits too. So yeah, I think that's great. Thanks, Dr. Mishra. Well, we need to save some time for everyone to ask questions, and I just wanted to let you know from a poll result standpoint, for the first one that you guys shared, the top answer for how seriously does your organization treat culture was the top one, very seriously, and we have a plan in place to improve it. 67% of you said absolutely. And then the next one was tied almost between very seriously, but we have no plan in place, and seriously, but not at the C-suite level. There were some that were in those, we'll take it seriously in the future and not right now. But most of you were at a good spot. The second item that we had asked you, which was who owns a culture? And we were kind of mean on this one. We made you choose. Who truly owns it? The top answer was HR, interestingly. 33% of you said this, but followed by, not far behind, the CEO. And then the third place answer was the manager. And fourth were board members. Last was no one, which I'm so glad that the conclusion after this whole event wasn't that no one owns it. So that's great. I want to give a chance if anybody has questions that they'd like to ask any of the panel members or all of them for you to be able to submit those items and questions. So, and Alice, you may see some of those coming through that I might miss. So let me know if you see some of these, but please submit some questions through the chat or through yeah, I think that's the one way you can do it in this. So if you can do that, we'd love to see what questions you might have. And we're happy to answer some of those, depending on what you're asking, I guess. We should have an answer. To Alice's point, we've got enough years of experience. All right, so one of the questions that was sent in pre the event by someone who couldn't stay the whole time, but wanted to watch the recording was they were thinking about the pressure that's on the middle manager. You know, they've got pressure from the top, they've got pressure from the bottom, and there's the squeeze on the middle manager. And so I'd love to hear from any of you. What do you think we need to do to help middle managers be successful? Maybe Avantika, do you want to get us started with your perspectives as you've worked at different organizations?
I think it's a tough one. It's one that everyone grapples with, but I think the fundamentals are the most important. The first and foremost, and I cannot stress this enough, at least based on my experience, is training them to be managers. Training them to be middle managers, because it's a really hard transition from when you are managing yourself and doing a great job at that and getting recognized for that, to transitioning to being a manager or even being a middle manager. You may be a skip level reporting manager, but you're still trying to balance stakeholders and expectations of the leadership. You're trying to work cross-functionally and make those relationships successful and those business outcomes successful. And in addition to that, you also have to manage a team. So I think skilling people on how to do those and enabling them with the right governance structures, the right processes, because it's not for a want of intention that they don't succeed. It's just that they don't know how. They don't know how to navigate between 3 different functions that don't get along. Maybe their bosses don't get along, and teams that have other challenges as well. So I think sticking to the fundamentals has really helped me as I've looked at this. Train them for what they're expected to do, give them the processes that enable them to work cross-functionally, and again give them the skills to be able to navigate top management, give them developmental input that helps them thrive in their roles.
I like that. Dr. Mishra, I'm going to come to you with a question on emotional intelligence for a second, but I want to build on this. Vipula, what do you think is the biggest skill that a middle manager needs to develop that a frontline manager doesn't really need to worry about?
Middle managers are basically responsible for ensuring that they are transferring what the leadership vision is, what the leader's mission is, and why they are doing it to each of their team members and also the frontline managers for further dissemination. I would again talk about the importance of maximizing the human connection and trust and hope and these skills as we think about ensuring that you are helping them set expectations, you are helping them how to coach individuals along the way, and how to drive accountability. I think those 3 skills are most important, Jeremie.
I love it. Thank you, Vipula. As I'm about to ask this last question you guys sent in to Dr. Mishra, what I'd like you to do is this kind of the last poll question, but I want you to use the chat for this. I would love for you to share what's your biggest takeaway, something that you can go do from this session that you've heard either from some of the presentations or the conversations that you've heard today that we've had in the panel. What is put down in the, and I'd love for as many of you to do it. There's over 200 of you on the line. I'd like you to overwhelm us with what you guys would love to do, and what do you actually, what can you take away and do from this? Dr. Mishra, someone asked about what's the importance of emotional intelligence for leadership in organizations. How important is that? I think this builds on what you were talking about, looking inside, and thinking about all the coaching you've done. Can you just speak to how important you think that element is amongst all the things that they need to be worried about?
I think emotional intelligence is innate. I mean, it's a must-have, and coming from it's a nice segue into the previous question, because I think that what really matters, and it continues, is communication. What Vipula was mentioning is an absolute key. Because for emotional intelligence, you need to have enough and more communication, and you can never communicate enough. That's number one. Number two is stakeholder management and leadership, because at every level it's stakeholders, and you do have difficult stakeholders, and it's about trying to take them in small bites, and which is really an emotional quotient that you need to develop with each one of them, because it's not going to be just deliverables, because as a frontline leader, you've already done the deliverables, you've moved on, and then you're a leader. And when you become a leader, one of the main things that you need to do is people management skills, to understand the kind of people that you have around, because one size doesn't fit all. You cannot paint everybody with the same brush. You have to have different ways of handling people, problems, situations, and the best way to do that, and which is part of the emotional intelligence, is to take a big problem, divide it into small little parts which you can munch and chew, and then work so that you have a feasible solution as you go forward. Long answer to a small question. Sorry.
No, I think it's great. Emotions are not easy to work through either, so it takes time to navigate all of that. Thank you to all of you for participating in this panel. You guys have been wonderful. I've really been warmed by the stories you've shared and the insights you've given. Alice, back over to you to close us out.
Thank you so much, Jeremie, and apologies, we are running just 1 or 2 minutes over, but I'd love to welcome Vipula to say some final words. But from my side, from the University of Cambridge side, we are leaders on this call. Just as a reminder, we're talking about managers, but we all represent people in leadership positions, and the definition of leaders versus managers is broadly agreed. Managers keep a complicated set of processes going, whereas leaders create and pioneer those processes in the first place. So it's up to us to adapt, to build resilience, and take responsibility for the future. And it's a great privilege to be a leader, but it's also an incredible responsibility. And I think this has perhaps been a timely opportunity for myself included to take a step back and ask ourselves questions about our workforces and how we can best nurture an environment for thriving, even for blooming. So if you would like to know any more about what we do in Cambridge with our board and executive level education around transforming businesses, please do get in touch with IOD India. I would also just reiterate what Jeremie says. There's a lot of fantastic questions in the comments here. So perhaps as part of the wrap up and the email thank you for this webinar, we can try and answer some of those questions on the panel and beyond. And would love to hear you putting in the comments there what you're going to do next. Would be intrigued to hear that. So my heartfelt thanks to all of you, all of our amazing expert contributors, facilitators, and of course to the Institute of Directors for India, and Gallup for putting on this event and for so warmly welcoming me along. So over to you, Vipula, for the final words.
60 seconds. Thank you so much. What brilliance, what insights, what stories that I'm learning from. Thank you, Jeremie, for such leading the session with such clarity and purpose, to our brilliant, decorated panelists for their thoughts, and of course, Mr. Shivakumar for his punchy 5 ideas for us to go forward. I just want to leave you with one thought. Behind every strategy, every performance metric, Every customer interaction is an individual who decides to give how much discretionary effort to give. How do we as leaders maximize that value, make the person feel great in the process, and drive economic growth that's incumbent upon us? Thank you so much for your time.